If it's broken, you have to fix it. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The scripting is not only working, but it has Mike Gundy grading and trending up. While we all watched Oli Gordon go scorched earth on the Kansas Jayhawks, having one of the best performances in all of college football over the weekend, he did it behind a, dare I say, good offensive line.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things cowboy and cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You know we're available on every single podcasting platform, visually as well on YouTube. Find me on Twitter at OState. Today we're partially brought to you by Game Time. There's no need to stress. Get in the action while the getting is good. Use the Game Time app. Promo code LOCKEDONCalls, you get $20 off starting now. All right. Speaking of getting things started off, Oli Gordon did a phenomenal job. Whenever you take into consideration what he was able to do, and as we discussed previously, some of the great running backs that have come through Oklahoma State, could you say RBU? Maybe, maybe not, right? But nonetheless, Chris Carson's career was cut shortly. Justice Hill's doing his thing. Chuba Hubbard's doing his thing. Jaylen Warren's doing his thing. And then if you go back even before that, everybody knows Barry. Everybody knows Thurman. You know, everybody, for the most part, knows Terry Miller. You may not know Gerald Hudson, but Gerald Hudson was the last Cowboy to do what Ollie did, which is over 100 and over 100 rushing and carrying since 1989, when our favorite, Mike Gundy, was the man at the helmet back then. But what's more impressive to me than having one of the greatest running back performances basically in Oklahoma State history, because as we just went down that list, you're not even taking into consideration other NFL guys like Keith Toston and Tatum Bell and Vernand Morency. And, you know, Dontrell Savage had a pretty good go. Kendall Hunter had a really good time in the NFL. What's even more impressive than what Oli Gordon was able to do was the offensive line. You guys know I love the film side of things, but I went back and watched the highlights twice, and all I did was watch the offensive line. That is it. Didn't watch receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, none of that. I watched strictly the offensive line. And if we're going to talk about the best performance of the year for them being Kansas State, not only the best performance of the year, but probably the best performance in Charlie Dickey's career in Stillwater, well, they followed it up and not only did it again, but Joe Michalski graded out as one of the best centers in all of college football. Cole Birmingham looked pretty good. Dalton Cooper looks really good at left tackle. And the injury I'm hearing is pretty minor. He should be back at practice here pretty quickly. But the versatility of Cole Birmingham, it's paying dividends. The versatility and senior leadership of Jake Springfield, it is in fact paying dividends. And then the guy who paved the way almost virtually all daggone day was Jason Queso Brooks. Guys, that is the best I've seen us pull guard, tackle, center combined and get to the second level while already having, as Gundy has been referring to it, as a hat on a hat, which that's basically what it is. When you get on a hat, you cover somebody up, and then you can get the offensive lineman to the second level. You're going to have opportunities. But let's not pretend that Oli Gordon might not be staring down a 1,500-yard season or a 2,000-yard season. But a 1,000-yard season is more than possible. Which is even crazier to think when you take into consideration the first three games, he only got the ball a handful of times, literally speaking. It was amazing to watch one person virtually take over an entire football field. And let's face it, we don't necessarily see it all that often. Tylan Wallace comes to mind as somebody that, you know, like a few years back, just completely took over the Texas game pretty much by himself. what Justin Blackmon did to Stanford back when they were really good with Andrew Luck in the Fiesta Bowl, right? That was kind of one of those Herculean performances. Now, we got a lot out of the defense too, which we'll kind of get to later on in the show. But the emphasis here needs to be, as much as what Oli Gordon did was phenomenal, and then again, it was super, super rare to see somebody wear that Superman cape in Stillwater and do it that effectively to that level. That offensive line. And to me, it's not completely rocket science, right? We'll talk about it a little bit more as far as the Gundy grading up. But, guys, this is more reminiscent of the conversations that were had pre-spring, pre-summer, pre-fall, in regards to what players' roles were going to be and why we were going to do the rotation and why we were going to use this style of offense and why getting somebody like Alan Bowman, who had some of the different versatility from the air raid at Texas Tech and some of the under center old school, 12 personnel, 22 personnel, 20 personnel type of groupings, and being under center a little bit, some at Michigan. It was never a carries thing, like numerically speaking. It was just about, as we've talked about 100 times, your only job as a coach is to put the players in the best positions to be successful. And if you do that and your players can trust and respect that these coaches are going to continuously put me in the best positions to make plays, then you traditionally get this level of result. This is a byproduct of the continuity and consistency and reliability that everybody was finding a way to count on each other with throughout the spring and the fall. And then again, season starts and it eroded pretty quickly, right? And it was almost like a purposeful destruction of the foundation, or at least that was the feeling that I had received. So you're not seeing the same level of sideline frustration, irritation, agitation that you saw in Iowa State. Pictures speak 1,000 words, and there was a lot of pictures on that sideline that spoke to what was happening. Well, then you can put some things in motion to maybe make it better. Clearly, it has to start with the players. Well, it doesn't have to. It did have to in this particular situation. And it does appear as though we're seeing some things that lead us to believe things are on the up and up all the way across the board. But we saw a little bit of this over the summer, so we don't know exactly. We don't know exactly if the buy-in is 100% all the way around. What we do know is the buy-in in the locker room is phenomenal. And we're clearly making a concerted effort right now to try to bring back some of the legends into the recruiting realm, into the NIL realm. If we can do that, that's going to do numbers for Oklahoma State. That'll have us constantly grading up, much like Gundy is doing at the moment. And it's all part of it, guys. Another part of life that all of us need to pay more attention to is the ease that you can have when trying to explore going to games, going to events, things of that nature, right? Because the planning and advanced stuff that it used to take and the flights and who's going to have the taxi and who are we going to have to get a rental, you don't have to worry about that as much anymore, because with Game Time, you can get tickets not only last minute, but even an hour after the game has started. You don't have to worry about buying tickets to the next big event. And it's not just sports. Music, comedy, and theater events that are near you will have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and best price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of you buying your tickets. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find, easy to view, easy to buy, even seeing the seats with the lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation, and job loss prevention. Not only are you going to have the opportunity to not be so stressed, but Game Time guarantee means that you will always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you back 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account. Use that code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Locked on College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Speaking of Game Time, we're seeing a different Gundy. And the reason why the buy-in hasn't made its full circle moment quite yet is because you don't erase, right, years of kind of complacency in just a matter of a few weeks. But just as you've seen some of the buy-in on the field, it all started with the players. They had multiple player-only meetings. And it really started with Iowa State. You would have thought that the big wake-up would have been South Alabama. Maybe from a coaching perspective, as far as Gundy was concerned, like, oh, crap, maybe we need to address some stuff. Maybe we need to dice and cut some stuff up to make it a little bit better. Maybe. But after that, the players decided we don't give a good hot dog anymore about what we can't control, right? As a coach, I mean, that is what you want. You want the accountability to be so internal that it's a fully functioning machine by itself. And as much as I just think it's pertinent that we have access to this information, and now that we know that it is in fact more accurate, and Gundy himself is saying that I'm having to be involved more than ever. I'm having to design plays and do things from a special team standpoint in the coach's office and working 13, 14 hours late, more than he has in the last 8 to 10 years, all that stuff. You know my frustration with it, okay? I mean, I'm still beyond irritated because this was the same kind of beginnings of the cancer that was happening last year. And instead of addressing it last year, the Gundy just refused to acknowledge that it was as severe as it was. So it's terrible that it took the Iowa State game for everybody to have a massive come to Jesus meeting, if you will, on what the right steps moving forward are. And then let's face it, guys, when Alan Bowman is getting more of what he thought he was getting into, making the trip from East Lansing to Waco to Stillwater, when Oli Gordon, again, it's not about a number of touches. It's just about some offensive innovation that'll allow him to become a bell cow guy. Oli Gordon came back against a lot of recommendations from people very, very, very close to him because he wants to be in that Thurman, Barry, Chuba, Justice, Jaylen, Chris, Tyreek. He wants to be in that same level of conversation. And it's not about necessarily promising, right? But when you promise a quarterback that we're going to run a different system than you've seen at Oklahoma State, and we need your wealth of knowledge that you had at Michigan to kind of bring it all to fruition, coupled with what you had at Tech. If you tell a guy we're going to have a 3 running back headed monster that'll allow us to put up some crazy numbers that'll make defenses have to trust that we're going to throw the ball a little bit more effectively. If the offensive line knows that they're going to have simplistic responsibilities and then they can maximize those, and they ran it in the spring and they ran it in the summer and ran it in the fall, and now that they can just basically pin their ears back, for lack of a better term, right? It's the same thing as a defensive end on third down, especially third and long-ish situations. You want to pin your ears back and just go to work, go to war. That's what the offensive line want too. That's what Charlie Dickey's good at, and now you're seeing it. We're not seeing a lot of zone blocking, but we are seeing some. And that's pretty interesting. Simply because we're able to do a split with the offensive line. One side can do zone. One side can do your traditional responsibilities. We can do some plays where it's just old school, 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole, 4 hole. And then we can mix it in with some of the zone stuff. Alan Bowman getting the ball out of his hand seems to be a pretty good recipe. But the comfortability that he has is also pretty important too. I have no problem getting behind Alan Bowman. I honestly feel like if Garrett Rangel and Gunnar Gundy would have got the same offense, we'd likely potentially be looking at a different starter. But again, the things that he was brought here to do from Michigan, he wasn't able to do the first few games. Now you're seeing what all the buy-in over the summer was about. And like I said, guys, Gundy was sitting in on position meetings, which he hadn't done in like 18, 19 years over the summer. So it seemed to be, okay, this is a more present Gundy. This is a more involved Gundy. But there's a difference between physically present and being mentally available, right? You can physically be present somewhere without being beneficial to the cog in the machine. And I think that's exactly what it was. Mike Gundy was at practice every chance that, he had to be. Thank you, Iberg. But throughout the course of this process, the guys start seeing Mike Gundy. His lights are still on. It's nighttime. And the head man's in the building. He's here earlier. He's doing more. He's on the whiteboard, drawing stuff up. We've already bought into each other. We've already bought into the staff like Coach Wozniak and Benny Tonga and Rob Glass and JW. We've bought into the staff that we know is going to work extra with us and be there for extra film, extra conversations, extra prep. And then we're just going to let the chips fall where they may. Well, that inspired the coaches to be in their offices more, to do more, to study more, to scheme more. Guys, Mike Gundy himself has been designing all the special team stuff for the last couple of weeks, and you see it. It's a breath of fresh air. My irritation hasn't changed. This Mike Gundy that pretended to be more mentally available and present this summer should have been this same Mike Gundy. Because these red flags and all of this was happening last year as well, and he ignored it. Matter of fact, he refused to even acknowledge that it was a problem. And then he was forced to be more present. He was, but he wasn't as engaged. After Iowa State, he had his own come to Jesus meeting, and it made him realize that I do need to be here every single day. I do need to stay late to design special teams plays on the board. I do need to be more cognizant and aware of what the pulse is. So that means he's not only grading up, but you're seeing the continuity that everybody wanted, that everybody was looking forward to. So, of course, Ollie's happier. Of course, Alan Bowman's happier. Of course, Jaden Nixon's happier. And let's face it, even some of the players that aren't playing, they're happier too, only because, winning cures a lot of things. But also, this is what we were promised. This is what we worked on. This is what we envisioned going into the season. And I think you could have kept the rotation of madness if there would have just been more consistency and knowledge being passed forth. All right? You don't want to treat your potential bell cows like they're insignificant. You don't have to give them the ball all the time. You don't have to do power formations all the time, but you got to do enough, especially for the guys who've already put in the work, for it to make sense on the field. Guys, another thing that makes sense for you is to go check out Prize Picks. It's the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of betting thousands of other players and pros and sharks and all that, you pick more than or less than 2 to 6 players based off of stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun you could physically possibly have, with winning up to 25 times your money, honey, this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more than or less than on the projected stats, and place the entry. It's literally that easy. With PrizePicks robot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for NFL games or college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is then rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with that kind of injury insurance. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Again, use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege for the deposit match up to $100. It is highly encouraged that you do this for your daily fantasy sports, because it makes life a little bit easier on you and you get to have fun and be in on the action. All right. The scripting. It's working. Not only is it working, but you're seeing it's pretty evident when the scripting goes out the window. Right? When it's time to just make in-game decisions on the fly and scheme your offense open live during the game, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. But you know who doesn't have that struggle? Bryan Nardo. It's so early on. The script that Mike Gundy's been putting together, first 20, 25 plays, beautiful. Chef's kiss. It's got to give everybody a little bit more hope. Maybe, legitimately speaking, Gundy being pressured a little bit more than he ever has in his career is, ironically enough, making him less stressed out. Because the scripting is just so good. It makes you wonder, like, okay, maybe you don't have your fastball, but this curveball, could it be something? Could it be something so spectacularly amazing that I don't know if teaching the done is the right frame of mind, because goodness me, guys, if Dunn don't get it by now, I don't know that Dunn's going to get it. And it stinks, man, that, he was once a very revered and respected wide receiver coach. Him having more responsibilities than he was prepared for, more responsibilities than he was capable of overseeing, it made him bitter. It made him kind of the Scrooge McDuck of the staff. And there's a difference, again, between hard coaching and just being a big old D for no logical reason. This is another portion as to why Gundy's grading up, because the scripting, it is so clear the difference between the first 25 plays and the rest of the game. Now, all I will say, don't know if this part is done or Gundy. If it's done, then he needs to receive the credit for this. But if you notice, Brendan Presley is another person that had conversations with what he was going to do, after the season was over. And I'm sure part of that was predicated upon securing the ball a decent amount. Again, not a certain number of touches, not that you're going to be, a Justin Blackmon style feature guy, but just more creative, innovative ways to get him involved. Well, you started seeing us moving him all around that arena ball style against Kansas State. We didn't use him a lot, but he was all over the place. This game, not only did we use him, but we kept setting up KU. The fourth quarter, when you saw Bryan Nardo figure it out, right, the last handful of possessions was like interception or turnover, punt, turnover on downs in the game. So Bryan Nardo got away from the script, and he had to find ways not necessarily of understanding, the deficiency, but finding ways to convey it down to the guys on the field and then to be able to pass it off in lifetime. Once he was able to figure that out and see what KU was kind of trying to do with their tight ends, because they did very, 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 very good with their play action and the way that they're hiding and disguising on the line, off the line with all the shifts and formations. But in all that craziness, somebody saw something. And BP, that pitch that he got on that little reverse, we ran the zone blocking scheme enough times that defenses had to respect it. And it had been successful enough throughout the course of the game and a couple times back to K-State that they had to kind of shift with it. And they did. And it does help that Ollie was, killing it. But the whole defense followed the line, followed Ollie. They went entirely to one side of the field. They had no clue that BP even had the ball. No idea. And that's something that when you see, this is what we're looking for in this particular play. And if you see it at some point in time in the game, but you got to make that mental note. Be like, hey, I remember what that linebacker and that defensive end did on that one particular play. If we catch them in that coverage, let's shift to that formation and let's see if we can get that linebacker or that defensive end to go to the exact same spot. And it worked. And it was gorgeous. And it was like, oh, okay. So we set that up last week. We didn't even use BP a whole lot, but we set it up. And then it works. It's amazing when you see a plan come together. And as we saw Nardo's plan, guys, that guy is a Mike Yursich style dude. He's a Mike Yursich style find. We're lucky that we're able to steal him away from Gannon, right? People want to throw shade and talk crap. That's fine. It's all right. We got him. You didn't. All right. The next time you get into the game, you don't want to have the crazy hangovers. You don't want to have the wild night that could potentially happen from drinking too much cervezas. Athletic Brewing Company is revolutionizing the non-alcoholic beer game. Yeah, you maybe think, I didn't even know that was a thing, Cody. It is. And Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the game. They've made non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Full-flavored, well-crafted, just like the full-strength beers. Great tasting, award-winning. They have 50 styles that you can choose from. They're consistently releasing limited edition experimental styles as well. They are the fit for all time. So you can drink them anytime, anywhere, for any activity. Watch the big game, kids game, go to tackle practice, be the tackler in the practice with no hangovers ever. First-time customers right now can use the code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. Again, that's 50% off when you use the code LOCKEDON, because Athletic Brewing is the near beer that you need to try. So go to a store near you or buy it online at athleticbrewing.com. Use the promo code for 15% off, Locked On. Athletic Brewing Company, the right fit for all times. All right, y'all. So we're going to put a bow on this with just the understanding that you can't script a whole game. It's literally impossible, right? Because you're scripting based on what you think they're going to do, based on what they've done, throughout the course of the season, whenever you run a similar defense or have similar looks, similar calls. You can't script a whole game, right? But does Gundy want to be in the office till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night all the time, designing stuff up and helping Dunn to this level? No, he doesn't. So when does it pop up? If you know you can script them, and Dunn sucks after the script's over, when does the time come that you pull your inner Steve Sarkisian and you just throw on the headset for the whole game? Because there's sprinkles of that fourth quarter that had some of that first quarter Gundy written all over it. All righty, y'all. We get to jump on later with Couz to talk about West Virginia. We've got a lot of guests coming up this week as well. So that's all for this one. Till next time. God bless you. Go Pokes. And thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Later, Tatum.